If Bristol is the only thing you're looking at, I think you're probably reading Shane Van Gisbergen the wrong way. Because yes, Bristol was bad. There's no dressing that up. He finished 34th, ended up 170 laps down, and that lap 160 spin didn't just ruin his race. It caught up Alex Bowman, John Hunter Nemechek, and Todd Gilliland, too. It was the kind of day that makes people slam the brakes on the whole SVG is figuring out ovals conversation. And honestly, if you wanted a reason to cool off on that idea, Bristol gave you one up. But I also think writing off everything he had been building before that race would be just as much of an overreaction. That's why Kansas matters so much now. Because if Bristol looked like a setback, Kansas is the kind of place where Shane Van Gisbergen can turn right around and make people nervous again. Before Bristol, he had quietly put together a really solid stretch of results. 6th at Atlanta, 11th at Phoenix, 14th at Darlington, 11th at Martinsville, 2nd at COTA. That's not a fluke run. That's the kind of stretch that changes how people talk about a driver, especially a driver like Van Gisbergen, because the whole question around him has always been the same one. Yeah, we know he can road race, but what happens when he has to do this every week on ovals? That's why the Bristol result hit the way it did, and not just because it was bad, but because it interrupted a story that had started to build real momentum. Now, to be fair, Bristol can make a lot of good drivers look bad. It's tight, it's unforgiving, and once your day starts to go wrong there, it can go wrong fast. SVG already made life hard on himself by qualifying 33rd, and once that spin happened on lap 160, the rest of the race was mostly damage control. His team kept him out there. They fixed what they could, but 170 laps down is still a disaster no matter how you frame it. The bigger question is what that race actually tells us. And I don't think Bristol is the cleanest way to judge the kind of oval progress he's been showing, because most of what he's done well this season has come at tracks where rhythm matters, where managing the car matters, where you need patience over a run and not just survival in traffic. Atlanta, Phoenix, Darlington, even Martinsville in its own way. Those tracks tell you more about whether a driver is learning how to race these cars over time. Bristol is different. Bristol is part speed, part survival, and once it gets away from you, it can bury you in a hurry. So for me, one bad Bristol doesn't wipe away the progress we already saw. That's exactly why Kansas feels like such a big spot for him. Kansas is the kind of oval that gives us a much better read on where Shane Van Gisbergen actually is right now. It's a track that rewards drivers who are smooth, disciplined, and patient. You need balance, you need feel, and you need to keep speed in the car without abusing it over a run. And those are the areas where he's looked more comfortable lately. That's also why this isn't some random bounce-back angle people are forcing. There's actual history here. Kansas is where he got his first top 10 on an oval in the Cup Series. Last fall, he went there, fought through a rough race, and still came back to finish 10th. That mattered because at the time it felt like the first real piece of proof that this whole oval learning curve was moving in the right direction. Not hype, not projection, real proof. So now he comes back to that track 1 week after his worst result of the year, and that's what makes this interesting. Because now it's not just about finishing position, it's about what kind of story Kansas restarts. If he goes there and runs well again. Even if it's not a top 10, even if it's just a strong, clean top 15 type of day where he looks competitive, then suddenly Bristol starts to look more like an ugly exception than a warning sign. And if that happens, the whole conversation around him heats right back up. Because not that long ago, people were starting to shift from SVG as an interesting road course guy to, hold on, this guy might become a real problem if he keeps figuring out these ovals too. That is a completely different conversation. And it's the one the rest of the field should be paying attention to. Because the part that still gets overlooked with Shane Van Gisbergen is how early he still is in this transition compared to the drivers he's racing every week. He is not finished developing on ovals. He's still building that side of his game in real time, so if he's already showing signs of progress now, then the bigger issue for everybody else is what this looks like a few months from now if that growth keeps going. That's why Kansas is more important than it might look on paper.